Hey guys, so I know this is a little difficult for you to see right now, word for word, on the paper that I'm working on. So what I'm going to have you really focus on for the next few minutes is listening to the words and sentences that I'm reading out loud. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with question number 1. It says, explain why the author says a sign came down from the world of grown-ups instead of just saying a parachute fell from the sky. If you go ahead and take a look at the entire first half of this passage, it talks about this figure falling from the sky. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read out loud the section that I want you to highlight. Okay, so it starts with the word but. It's in the third sentence. But there were other lights in the sky that moved fast, winked, or went out, though not even a faint popping came down from the battle fought at 10 miles height. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that first sentence that I just read. But a sign came down from the world of grown-ups, though at the time there was no child awake to read it. There was a sudden bright explosion and a corkscrew trail across the sky, then darkness again and stars. There was a speck above the island, a figure dropping swiftly beneath a parachute, a figure that hung with dangling limbs. All right, so this question asks why they said a sign came down from the world of grown-ups, okay? If you look at the different words that they use to describe this, the first part that we highlighted said that a faint popping came down from the battle fought at 10 miles height. Okay, that's just another way of saying that there is a war going on above the boys. If you guys think back to the pre-reading research that we did when we were talking about World War II going on when this novel was written, we know that World War II was the first war in history to start using bomber planes. So we know that there is severe war going on above these boys. All right, so when you start to write your answer for this, I want you to go ahead and mention something about a war going on above them. And then I want you to think back to the whole idea of Piggy and Ralph talking about the fire. Okay? At this point in the novel, the fire had gone out. So there was absolutely no chance of anyone seeing that fire and knowing that the boys were on this island. Now, if they would have listened to Ralph and Piggy, then there is a higher chance that the men in these planes above them would have seen that fire. So that would have upped their chances of being rescued at this point in time, okay? So I want you to also mention something about that in this space underneath question number 1. Now, I want you to think that, if there's grown-ups fighting this war above them, people are closer than these boys think right now. All right, when they see this figure, this parachute figure, they're going to realize that the adult world is very, very close to them, and they're not as far away as they think. So when you finish up with number 1, I want you to go down to number 2. It says, explain how this paragraph adds to one of the themes of the novel. At this point in the novel, we have mentioned multiple themes for you to choose from. Now, when Miss Webster and I were going through this passage, we decided to pick 3. So I'm going to talk about each of those 3, but you only need to pick 1 to talk about. All right? Now, the first one is that whole idea of rescue and hope. All right? We just kind of briefly mentioned that in number 1 about the whole idea of the fire signal being their sign of rescue. All right? If the men in the planes would have seen that, it would have upped their chance of being rescued, okay? So if you choose to talk about the whole idea of rescue and hope, go ahead and mention something about that. Pull a little quote from here, or even go back to chapter 5 and reread some of those parts if you need to. Now the second one is the one that we've talked about most so far, and it's the idea of savagery. We see savagery mostly in this first section that we highlighted because it comes straight out and tells us that there is a battle being fought right directly above these boys. okay? You can't get any more savage-like than fighting a war, and essentially that is exactly what's going on right now. Now the third one we've also talked about a ton, especially in terms of the beastie. It's the whole idea of fear. Now fear doesn't really get mentioned until the whole second half of this passage. So I want you to go ahead and listen to the next few minutes of this. If you choose to do fear, you can come back up to number 2 and talk about what we read down here. Okay? So number 3 asks us to explain the effect the wind had on the fallen figure beneath the parachute. If you look right underneath this purple, it immediately starts talking about the wind, okay, and all the different things that the wind is doing to this parachute, okay? The part that I really want to focus on is more towards the bottom, okay? I'm going to start with this sentence. Here, the breeze was fitful, right? So if you guys look down on that, I'm going to start reading out loud and highlighting the important parts. Here the breeze was fitful and allowed the strings of the parachute to tangle and festoon. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that first part. And the figure sat, its helmeted head between its knees, held by a complication of lines. When the breeze blew, the lines would strain taut, and some accident of this pull kited the bead and chest upright, so that the figure seemed to peer across the brow of the mountain. Then, each time the wind dropped, the lines would slacken and the figure bow forward again, sinking its head between its knees. Okay. So if you guys really look at this part and think about this part, essentially what it's saying is that this figure that's in the parachute, okay, we're not too sure if it's a person or not yet because it doesn't specifically tell us. It just keeps referring to it as a figure every time that it talks about it. All right? But essentially what it's saying is that this figure looks like he is sitting, peering out over the mountain. All right? Every time the wind blows, it pulls the tangled strings forward, and it looks like this figure has his head in between his knees. Then the wind blows again and pulls the figure back, and it looks like he is looking over the mountain again. All right? This was what I was talking about, the whole idea of fear. Okay? The boys don't know what this thing is yet. And when they find him and they see that it looks like there's some sort of thing in this parachute looking at them and moving, it's going to scare them. Okay? So to answer number 3, you're going to look right in this highlighted pink section that we just went over. So once you guys are finished with that, I want you to go ahead and start doing the second part of this assignment. All right, you're going to start with this first paragraph, and you're going to go all the way to page 3. All right, and you're going to stop right here at these 4 little stars. So that means you're going to answer the questions on the second page and this question right here, this number 1. All right, and then the next video that we post is going to go over all those questions so that way we're all on the same page. So good luck with that.